Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather next week to 10 days. In today's video, it's going to take us into the second half of March. We'll go up to the 19th of the month with this update. Same idea as we've had over the past few updates, really. We're going to have a mix of typical spring weather. There will be some unsettled weather coming up, particularly later next week, but also very pleasant dry spells as well. And it's a really nice day today. I have more days like this in between sort of rain bands, so very typical spring conditions on the way. Before I get on with today's video, just say about the ads. There's video ads to most pages. You say own the content when you watch them, you can close them back up again, and it does help to pay for gas. Well, so just starting with the central temperature, it's turning into a very mild month. So we currently provisionally stand at 6.4 in terms of the CT, which is an anomaly of 1.6 degrees. And that's provisional, as I say, up to yesterday, the 8th. So the first week of March has come out around 1.5 degrees warmer than average. And I suspect that would be typical for many parts of the country. It has turned out to be really quite a mild start to the month. These are the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts for the next week to 10 days. Then we've got the E70F here on the top, and the GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 80,000 feet is an area in the absolute high pressure, low pressure beam driven by a jet stream running above. And blue extrapolates to low pressure, red extrapolates to high pressure. Now what we see here is that we've got a ridge around the Azores and through the Atlantic with low pressure up to the north, and the jet stream indicated by the lines coming through the country. Now, there is a ridge over to the east, but it looks like that is not going to be able to be delivering us cold weather. It looks like we're going to maintain an Atlantic flow, which will be fairly mild, with rain at times, courtesy of this area of low pressure, but also this ridge down here providing, particularly the south, some very pleasant and quite warm days. That's the E70F, but GFS is a little bit more unsettled. So what we see is essentially the same setup. We've got the ridge down here to the south, and the low pressure is to the north, with the jet stream coming through the Atlantic into the country. The difference is that the trough is deeper and further south, so it is more unsettled. This will be bringing potentially quite heavy bouts of rain at times. It is Atlantic driven, and there's a slight northwest to southeast component to the flow, so it's a little bit cooler as well. Generally the GFS is cooler and more unsettled going into the second half of the month compared to the E70F. They're very close, really very similar in what they're doing, but it's just that the GFS is perhaps more unsettled, might be going a little bit over the top perhaps. These are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next 2 weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average, with significantly milder than average now and will remain so into the weekend. Over the weekend, through the start of next week, turns a bit cooler. And then after that, we're just sticking very close to average. Now, it looks like we get a little bit of a cooler spell coming through there around the 17th of March. A little bit of a cold snap, maybe lasting 1 day. And I suspect what's happening there is what we saw on the height anomaly chart, that the wind becomes aligned northwest to southeast, or the flow becomes aligned northwest to southeast, which possibly produces some slightly colder weather from Greenland. But essentially it's a average really seen with the upper air temperatures. Nothing particularly dramatic going on either way. We've lost the big amount of scatter that we have. You remember a few days ago we was getting ensemble members up here and ensemble members that were down here, and there's something like a 20-degree differential. It looks like we're converging just around average temperatures really through the course of next week. Precipitation shows it turns more unsettled next week, so not a huge amount of rain coming up through the rest of this week into the weekend, into the start of next week. There will be a little bit at times, but nothing generally very unsettled. But as we go through into the latter part of next week, and then into the second half of March, the rainfall spikes are coming back a bit, so it does imply that possibly things turn more unsettled from later next week. The temperature anomaly is holding up quite nicely. This is temperature anomaly from the 8th to 16th of March, above average temperatures there. And the precipitation anomaly, actually for the next week, it's a little bit drier than average, but I would suspect these might start to trend a bit wetter over the next few days. But essentially it's a mild and fairly dry scene coming up. Here's the GFS for Monday, then still under a ridge of high pressure down to the southwest. Then we go through to Tuesday, and that ridge is still extending through, although it's a little bit more unsettled up to the north. That's a very pleasant start to next week. The middle part of next week finds low pressure starting to move down from the north and west. So it is turning more unsettled through the middle and latter stages of next week. And it looks like we're going into, up to day 10, quite a westerly phase of weather. So this is going to be bringing in bands of rain with showers in between. And temperatures probably coming out quite close to average. We finish up on day 10, which is Sunday the 19th of March, looking unsettled. The flows from the northwest, it's a little bit cooler there. But it's all Atlantic driven. There's no sign of any easters, no sign of anything plunging down from the north. It's just very classic, typical March weather. Moving through to the ECMWF, and this is what we see for Monday. So we've got a little bit of a ridge extending across the country. We get through into Tuesday, that ridge is still extending there. So it's going to be a fairly pleasant start to next week, I think, away from northern Scotland. Should be mostly dry and mild. Still, the ridge is close to us on Wednesday, but by Thursday it is breaking and low pressure is starting to come down from the north and west. So second half of next week, still an idea, but it's turning a bit more unsettled. And then these westerlies take us through into the extended range. We go up to day 10, which is Sunday 19th of March, and we're in that westerly flow. And we've got still a fairly highish pressure to the south, low pressure up to the north. So it implies that most unsettled conditions will be in the northwest, but driest conditions will be in the south and east. But all places will get some rain at times. So nothing particularly dramatic going on for the next week to 10 days. Very typical spring weather. There will be some bands of rain, and that's more particularly later next week. But in between, very pleasant conditions, especially sort of now through to the weekend, and then again as we get through to the early part of next week, very pleasant weather at times. And yeah, just enjoy it because there's no sign of certainly no sign of any throwbacks to winter, and nothing really dramatic coming up. Right, I'll keep you posted. It's JMA Friday tomorrow, looking at the month ahead. That takes us into April, I think. So come back for that tomorrow. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.